Continuing our SEC preview with the Tennessee Volunteers. And Dalton, it wasn't really year 3 of the Josh Heupel era. It wasn't as magical as it was in 2022. Still went 9-4 though, and won the Citrus Bowl over Iowa. They have now finished in the top 20 of the AP poll in back-to-back seasons, which is something that Tennessee hasn't accomplished in 19 years. And there's a lot of expectations they're going to do it again in 2024, thanks to a potentially really explosive offense. But there are some defensive questions that we'll get into in a little bit with the Volunteers. But, man, this offense could put up a lot of points next year, Dalton.
Yeah, and the reason you always have hope, right, is because you have Josh Heupel and the way he runs this offense, and they're near the very top in plays per game, and they get downfield, and they run all the RPO stuff. It's as modern a college offense as it gets, right? And you've seen teams who are kind of copycatting this offense now for them, but Josh Heupel's the originator of it, right? And now what you have is last year they went the transfer route with a veteran quarterback in Joe Milton. Now you've got a young quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. We'll have to get used to that. And a loaded group of receivers, right? You've got Brew McCoy and Squirrel White coming back. Tulane transfer Chris Brazzell, who's a really good player, coming in. You've got the quarterback with all of the talent in the world. You've got a stacked group of receivers. You've even got a decent group of tight ends. This is a team that is still going to score a lot of points, and their offense and their passing game specifically is going to keep them in a ton of games.
Absolutely. And Nico looked awesome against Iowa, one of the best defenses in the country, 84.9 grade in that game. And I mentioned top 15 receiving core in the country, and then one of the best offensive lines in the country, too, Josh Heupel. Biggest weakness, though, Dalton, is defensively, is James Pearce Jr. enough? Because he's one of the best players in the country, no doubt about that at all. And he's the best edge defender in college football, in our opinion, and our projected number 1 overall pick in 2025. But other than that, dude, there are a lot of questions for them on that side of the ball. Losing some guys to the transfer portal, like Tyler Barron, the other edge defender who left, who's now at Miami now. They lost 9 of the 9 volunteer linebackers, corners, and safeties. So the guys in the back 7, linebackers, corners, and safeties, 9 of them played 300 snaps last year. Only 1 of them came back to school. So they have a lot of guys to replace in that linebacking core, in the secondary as well, and mentioned Tyler Barron leaving before too. So James Pearce Jr., yes, he is an absolute freaking superstar. But is he enough? Is he enough for the Tennessee defense to not turn into a shootout every week for them? That's, I think, the biggest question with the Volunteers right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. They're certainly, outside of one guy, offensive leaning, and they're going to continue to be that way. And look, there's a world where they are still the most explosive offense in the SEC, right? But you can't win games 60-50 every week, and that's going to have to be, that's going to have to be at a premium for them, finding defensive players who can at least make them an average defense, right? The biggest reason for that is because you also can't guarantee that they're going to score 50 points a week with such a young quarterback in Nico Iamaleava for them, right? He's made 1 start last year against Iowa in their bowl game. Now he tore him up for sure. An 85 passing grade in that game, 4 total touchdowns. He just looks like a Josh Heupel quarterback, right? Like tall, cannon arm, can really run, can do all the things physically. Like just as when you talk about quarterbacks in college football right now and just physical tools, he's probably in the top 5 when it comes to that. It's just everything. The frame, the speed, the unlimited arm strength. I mean, he's I would say an almost freakier version, especially with the running of Joe Milton, right? Where it's like, maybe he's not as thick, but I think he is faster. He can do some things when he gets out scrambling. But, we saw every bit of his potential in that bowl game. I mean, if there's one thing that I can pick apart in just one game, he took 6 sacks in that game. We charged 2 of them as kind of being at least partially his fault, and a time to throw in that game average of 3.58 seconds. That won't hold up for a whole season. So speeding it up a little bit, but a lot of it is just going to be getting reps in that offense and the hyper speed that they run this offense with. This is the type of guy whose body type and skill set is just perfect. Like, I think he's got as much potential as any player in the country, and Josh Heupel's going to love his talent at that spot.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And former 5-star recruit, dude. I think his tools are the best of any of the 5-star quarterbacks we had in 2023. So he could be really interesting evaluation for 2026, right? When you have all the tools in the world, maybe he has a great year next year, but it's always the question, okay, the Josh Heupel offense, that's going to be a question for him. So that'll be interesting evaluation for the NFL draft, but I think he's got a big chance to be a breakout player. And right now, in the betting odds, he's pretty high in the Heisman odds too, man. So it could be an interesting year for Nico next year. He does have a really good mate in the backfield, though, in Dylan Sampson, the new running back for Tennessee, who takes over for Jalen Wright. He had forced missed tackle on 29% of his carries last year, which only trailed Jalen Wright among SEC running backs. He was also third in the SEC with 195 yards after the catch. So with Jalen Wright now in the Miami Dolphins, I think Dylan Sampson is the number one running back for this team. Could have a huge, huge breakout year for them in his junior year. So really good year as a sophomore, 81.5 grades he saw, 80-plus grades both as a rusher and receiver. I think Dylan Sampson could be in for a major breakout year now as a full-time starter for Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree. Sampson, Iamaleava, the receivers, all of that stuff, it's going to be a constant for them that their offense, and with Josh Heupel coaching them too, their offense is going to be really, really good. The games they lose are probably still going to be played into the 40s and things like that, but they don't have as many constants on defense, but they do have one, and that's off the edge, number 27, James Pearce Jr., man. We've talked about him. This is a potential number one overall pick. This is a freak show. This is an absolute freak show. 92.4 pass rush grade last year. Third in the nation in pressure rate. Also, just the best returning pass rusher in college football. I think his floor is Dallas Turner. That's the floor. I think he's even better than that. You talk about a stand-up guy who can just explode off the ball, and his technique isn't even anywhere near an A level yet. His technique is probably a B- or a C+, but the way he gets off the ball, the athleticism is so freaky. The pick six he had in the bowl game against Iowa, you got a guy at 242 pounds who hit 23 miles an hour, right? Like, edge rushers don't do that. Like, that's you talk about 23 miles an hour, you're talking about Ollie Gordon and Amarion Hampton and receivers and like the Malik Neighbors of the world. Like, that's just not. It almost makes no sense how physically gifted James Pearce Jr. is. Best pass rusher in the country. And look, if you're trying to build around anything on defense, at least you have him. We've said it before. He might be the number one overall pick in next year's draft.
Really could, man. And the fact that he's still underdeveloped in so many areas is so scary considering how good he was last year too. So yeah, it could be a top 5 pick, could be the number one overall pick in next year's draft and the best edge defender in college football. All right, Dalton, bottom line time now. What are the expectations for Tennessee next year? Is this a team that could compete for a playoff spot, do you think? Or is this more of a team that you think with the new quarterback and some unknowns on defense will probably be more of like a top 20-ish team in college football?
I think, you're kind of riding that gray area with Tennessee where I think a playoff spot isn't totally out of the question considering how well they can score. I think Nico could be down the line or maybe even very soon an improvement on Joe Milton, right? They were a top 20 team last year anyway. In the last 2 years, they're going to score points and they're going to score with anybody. If you let, it's been shown over the last couple of years, whether it's Hendon Hooker, Joe Milton, or now with Nico, you let them get loose and they'll score 50, 60, 70 points on you. They don't care. The defense is a huge question mark. You have to be able to make stops, right? I think there's a world they can make a playoff spot. I don't think it's a likely world that we're living in, but I think it's going to depend on your quarterback, right? And how a young kid who's made just one start can do through, again, the gauntlet, the SEC gauntlet. Can he do it every week? Are there times where he's going to get rattled? Is their defense good enough? And, if he has to score 50 one day for the win, can he do that with a defense that may or may not be kind of flawed? So I probably wouldn't pick them to make the playoff, but there is a world if everything were to hit their ceiling. You mentioned Nico as a dark horse Heisman kind of guy. If we went down that road and that's what he became, that's when you're talking about it. It's really going to be all about their offense putting up huge points and their defense being good enough.
Oh, you look at their FanDuel win total right now, it's 9.5. If they hit the over on that, man, that is a playoff team.
They're in. Yeah. They're in. Yeah, that's like a cutoff of like you're either a playoff team or not. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And they play the second easiest schedule in the SEC as well, according to our power rankings. Only Missouri has an easier schedule than Tennessee in the SEC. They play NC State on the road, which is a difficult-ish game. That's a solid team. They're on the road against Oklahoma. They are home against Alabama, home against Kentucky, and at Georgia. But other than that, they should win, pretty much every other game. So I think 9 wins is probably what I would expect for Tennessee next year. I agree with you. I don't think it's a playoff team, but they play a easy enough schedule. Again, easy in the SEC is saying, it's not the same in any other conference, but I think Tennessee could just surprise the people. And I think Nico, if he really is the truth, like a lot of people think he will be, and I think he potentially could be, this could be a team that makes a college football playoff next year. But some major questions defensively, and this could be a team that we just see the over-under for their games is like 90 every week, just because they're going to put up a lot of points and let up a lot of points as well. So that could be what happens in Tennessee football next year. But that's what we got for our preview of the Volunteers heading into 2024. Again, we're doing this for every single one of the 70 Power 4, Power 5 teams that we have in college football. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any single one of them.